Recording and give another welcome. This is the MIT Architecture Fall Open House for prospective students. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Nicholas DeMoncho, our department head, who is going to give us a warm welcome and tell us a little bit about why you should choose the architecture department here at MIT. Nicholas? Nicholas, you're still muted.
So it's only been 5 years using Zoom, so I'll get the hang of that at some point. Good morning, everyone. I'm so delighted to welcome you to our virtual open house. I think we're here for you to decide if MIT is right for you, but I will tell you it's the best place to study architecture. I'll explain a little bit why I think that's the case, and then I'll try and get done with my presentation with enough time to answer questions, which feel free to both put in the chat and or also raise your virtual hand after I'm finished. So let me just share screen. And so can I get a thumbs up that folks are seeing slides? Yes, very good. So I'd like to explain MIT architecture with architecture. It's one of the things we do in the department is to think critically about architecture and what it tells us about the world, including about our own world here. So this is a room or two sets of rooms in the Rogers Building, which was the first home of the MIT when it was founded in 1861, and it was the first home of MIT architecture, which was the fourth department added to the new institute at its founding. So we're still known as Course 4, especially for undergraduates. And MIT was, amongst other things, the first school of architecture in North America. And so we have a very long and very important history of professional education. And it's still the case that many, if not most, of our M.Arch graduates go on to professional careers in architecture of various forms, and often at the very height of the discipline, winning awards for young architects, profiles in architecture magazines, et cetera, et cetera. This is another building at MIT. It's MIT moved across to the current campus that it occupies in 1916. Architecture actually is one of the professional departments, didn't move from the city of Boston until 1937, when the building that I'm sitting in was completed. This is a building that was built only 5 or 6 years later, but to reflect a very different reality. This is Building 20, which was built for the development of radar and the MIT Rad Lab, which developed radar during the Second World War. And it was the home of a certain kind of research culture that developed at MIT and then became really formalized in the post-war university, of which MIT is the kind of quintessential example in terms of its commitment to research and the development of technology and innovation. And so the MIT Department of Architecture really sits in between these two spaces, in between the classical mode of studio education that we were the first to introduce in this country and the space of R&D. And so we are, amongst other things, I think here researching and creating the future of the profession. Historically, that looked like the invention of CNC machines or CAD, the first composite house, the first experiments in architecture and computation that later led to the development of the Media Lab. Today, it looks like a range of different work in experimental tectonics, in building, building prototypes, in urbanism and ecology, in studies of resilience and architecture and climate change, of construction, of dislocation, of identity and the city, of modularity and circularity in the economy, of architecture, of research and books, of exhibits like the Venice Biennale, which our dean curated in 2021, and our colleague Carlo Rotti curated in 2025. Here's a prototype on the right by the architect Soil and our newest faculty member, Mariana Popescu. It looks like a kind of high profile and identity in the larger architectural landscape. It looks like a consistent rating as one of the very best, if not the best, departments for architecture and research globally. And of course, it has its own challenges and opportunities at the current moment. This is a moment where the university in general in this country is facing enormous challenges that need to define itself and to often to stand up for itself and what it represents in society. We're at the forefront of those conversations. We're at the forefront of conversations about climate and architecture, and we're at the forefront of conversations about what the profession means and what it should be at this particular moment in history. I'm going to give you just a few specific examples of things that are going on in the department that help illuminate these conversations. And then, as I said, I'm going to open it up for questions. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is, as I say, we have a focus on climate in the department, not so much on not only, I should say, in very specific research on the role of building in our current climate challenges. As you may or may not know, building, the maintenance and production of buildings produces 40% of greenhouse gases, and the emissions that and the effect of the built landscape on climate gets even larger when you consider things like transportation. And then, of course, as we're seeing now, as I speak in Jamaica, the built environment is at the forefront of the effects of climate. And we approach that with not so much a sense of optimism, but a sense of responsibility and a sense of architecture's continual ability to reconceive and redesign situations and environments to adapt to current circumstances. Right now, we're showcasing a whole bunch of work in the department thinking about climate and change and resilience and responsibility and inventiveness in all the ways that I would love to imagine and invite you to think about here. At the very end of the current Biennale in Venice. Of course, we have many faculty in the main exhibit, but we have our own exhibit as part of a platform called The Next Earth at the Berggruen Arts and Culture Palazzo Diedo. And if you were there right now, if we were there right now, which would be wonderful, we'd see the work of 37 different faculty members showcasing a range of different physical innovations, critical modes of thinking, prototypes, and student collaborations, which we're very excited to feature. Climate's also at the heart of one of our current curricular experiments in the school, which is a set of what will eventually be 3 ongoing research studios, which are studios that any M.Arch or SMArchS student can take in the towards the middle of the M.Arch curriculum, which actually engage in a multi-year process of research. The first one, which we started a couple of years ago, and the second one has come. So the second and one has just been arranged and is led by Brandon Clifford, who's on the call. He can tell you about it. And then the third one will start next year. The first one is a great example, is a collaboration between a design faculty member, Sheila Kennedy, a noted architect here in Boston, and an engineering and building science faculty member, Caitlin Mueller, on material circularity in architecture. It's called Odds and Mods, and it's about building with strange waste and otherwise cast away pieces of material. Here's the kickoff of that adventure in a table made of recycled shipping pallets. And here's just a glimpse into the most recent studio in that multi-year cycle, which looked at both wild and, that is, unmilled and reclaimed wood. A few of the student projects from that, which go from, of course, classical buildings, but then also explorations of tectonics and materiality and engineering, which continue to push that research forward. Another activity in the department across the last few years is something called the Robert Taylor Project, which is a collaboration, is based on the legacy of Robert Taylor, who is here in that same room that I showed you at the very beginning with his classmates in 1892. This is Robert Taylor was the first Black graduate of MIT and the first Black registered architect in the United States. And he left Boston and went to Tuskegee, and the employee of Booker T. Washington, where he built most of the Tuskegee campus and founded its architecture school based on an adapted version of the curriculum of MIT. And so over the last few years, we've really collaborated closely with the architecture department at Tuskegee on this project, looking at both recording and documenting Taylor's architectural legacy at Tuskegee. Here are some MIT students doing that, and running workshops and collaborations with Tuskegee students and faculty here at MIT. Here we are last year looking at Robert Taylor's thesis, which is a remarkable document, which you'll also get to see if you come here and participate in that project. The last piece of current events I'll share with you is, of course, not just our new building, which we'll move into next year in time for your arrival, but also the larger thinking behind it, which is creating a kind of design center for the conversation on design at MIT. This is not a new conversation. If we look to again to the history, not just to spaces, but to documents, our very first department head, William Ware, made the case that the Department of Architecture was not just an important place at MIT for what it did itself, but for the ways in which thinking about design pulled together all the different expertise of the MIT campus. It was true when MIT had 4 departments, and it's even more true when MIT has 30 departments. And so with our collaborators at the Morningside Academy of Design, which is one of the new occupants of the building with us, we're moving both ourselves, the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and the Morningside Academy, or MAD as we call it, into this space, this building seen here on MAD's homepage and renderings. This is what it looks like this morning. As you can see, it's almost finished. That's the north-facing side where large studios have been cut into the fabric of an existing storage warehouse by the architects Dillers, Video, and Renfro. This is the south side where new windows join the old facade in a kind of legible addition of conversation of old and new. The west facade, just for completeness. And this is what it's beginning to look like inside. Pinup spaces, studios, classrooms. This is one of the double heights, looking out from one of the double height studio spaces to faculty offices. This is the interior of a single height large studio space. And this will be the platform of the department for probably something like the next 100 years, in which we'll continue to answer the question that was asked by William Ware at the founding of the department, which is to reflect that it's the aim of the school to do what it can in its day and generation to ensure that the architecture of the future shall be worthy of the future. This was a very important question to ask then. I think it's an even more important question to ask now. And so over the course of today, you'll be introduced the many ways in which we're thinking about the future and the future of the architecture profession in particular here at MIT through our professional education, through our post-professional SMArchS and PhD programs, and through the culture of collaboration and questioning that we really delight in, that takes place in this place between our students, our faculty, our staff, and our whole community. So I will stop it there and look forward to answering any questions you have about that presentation or anything else. If we get very specific questions on individual programs, I'll answer them quickly, and then you'll also be able to get a longer answer to most of those in the individual sessions on those programs. So now it's up to you. If we were in a physical classroom, I would usually try to have a treat like a cookie or something for the person who asked the first question. We don't have that incentive here today, unfortunately, but I will rely on your goodwill and desire to move this event forward.
I had a question.
Please.
Hi, my name is Ryan. Nice to meet you, and it's very exciting to be here. But my question is, I've heard a lot of kind of rumors, or not rumors, but maybe just what my friends say who have attended MIT, that MIT loves to kind of admit students from all walks of life, especially when in terms of architecture. Sometimes they sometimes also look for students that are not necessarily in architecture. And so just kind of, could you speak a little bit? I am in architecture, and so I'm really interested in like the way you guys approach this. I just wanted to kind of have a little bit more insight on like what exactly would you guys, how you guys define like the studio culture in there, and in terms of things like cross-pollination of like knowledge and things like that. Yeah.
Gosh, well, I think first of all, we admit many students without architectural backgrounds and many students with architectural backgrounds. And of course, that's a kind of binary way of looking at it. And everyone's experience actually falls in a beautiful gray area in between. So yeah, we have students in our SMArchS program and in our M.Arch program and in our PhD programs who have never encountered architecture before, but have decided that what they want to learn is in a Department of Architecture. In our professional program in particular, we really enjoy creating a mix of students with a range of different backgrounds, and that's based on our embrace of the certain knowledge that the students in our department learn far more from each other than they do from the faculty. And that's not to underestimate the contributions of the faculty. It's just to say that there's an enormous amount that we recognize that students get from their cohort and groups around them in all of our programs. And so if we can bring as much range of experience and diversity of insights to those programs in terms of the students that we admit, we are doing a service to everyone in them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I'm now in Syracuse. And I have a question for the MAD school. I'm very happy to see the new updated interior photos of MAD. And I'm wondering, in the future, is architecture school going to have like collaboration with law school? I'm wondering if is there going to be like joint programs or a collaboration between like more commercial phase programs and maybe real estate programs, and how's that connection going to be like?
Sure. So yeah, we collaborate closely with the Morningside Academy for Design, and we're moving in together to a building which will house all of the School of Architecture and Planning other than the Media Lab. And so the building will be known as the Metropolitan Warehouse. We do collaborate already with Sloan, actually, in the School of Architecture and Planning, fairly closely on our Masters of Science in Real Estate Development, and that's coordinated by, it's a degree that is housed in the Center for Real Estate, which is another unit in the School of Architecture and Planning, and several of our M.Arch students currently enrolled are usually doing a dual degree in real estate through the CRE.
Thank you.
It's actually the first master's in real estate that was ever founded in the country as well. A little younger than the first M.Arch. It was founded in the 1980s, but it's a very important node of expertise here in the school.
Good morning. I have a quick question about research. I was told that M.Arch students sometimes participate in research, and I was wondering what that looks like, because that was a new proposal for me.
I mean, it looks like all kinds of amazing things is what it looks like. I think yes, especially after their first couple of semesters in the core sequence, it's very common for M.Arch students to get involved in research, and there are a couple of ways that happens. There's either work in the summer or work as a research assistant during the semester for a specific faculty member. Nowadays, there's also these are research studios, the option studios that are examining a research question over multiple years. So there's several of those, and that's a very direct way for, especially for M.Arch students, to get involved in research in the school. And then often students are, actually developing, albeit initially at a smaller scale, their own interest in research questions, which really every student is expected to do, because that is a substantial part of the degree in the form of the M.Arch thesis, which students do in their final semester, working closely with a faculty advisor and reader to produce what is designed to be a kind of capstone piece of architectural research of their own.
Nicholas, it might be worth introducing what a workshop is at MIT.
Oh yeah, so this is also a really important opportunity. A kind of key part of the department culture is that alongside our studios, we have every semester a whole set of not only elective seminars, but elective workshops. And workshops, again, are really focused on classes that are focused on a research question and on producing a specific kind of piece of fabrication or software, or and that's a key part of the curriculum and culture of SMArchS and of M.Arch in particular. Do you have anything to add to that, Brandon?
Just to distinguish it from other schools, sometimes a workshop is treated like a weekend skill building exercise, but here it's treated as a group of people coming together almost as a research lab to focus on a subject. So it's closer to a research seminar or half a studio. It's somewhere in between, but it's a kind of common piece of the fabric here at MIT.
Hi, I have a question. I understand MIT is very diverse school in terms of research or faculty or students. I want to learn more about how you guys celebrate the diversity, like curriculum or events or workshops that you guys just talked about.
You're interested in how we
Like, I know it's like a very broad question.
yeah.
How?
Well, there's celebration, which is very important. we have almost weekly celebrations at a weekly student happy hour where we just rejoice in getting through the week and moving things forward. We regularly showcase work through symposia and meetings and lectures and presentations and public events. We have for the scale of our department, we have about 200 students in different programs and about 40 faculty. So very, as you can see, a very low faculty student ratio. We produce an enormous amount of publications, events, exhibitions, like the one I showed you in Venice. And so we really, we are all here at MIT in particular because we want to shape the world and be in dialogue with the world. So part of that looks like celebrating our own achievements with ourselves, and part of it looks like really trying to engage the world as much as possible and have and sometimes even lead the conversation on the issues in the profession and in the built environment that we think are really important right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Perhaps I could add to that, Nicholas, and then maybe that would provide a segue into the next part of the program.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to take another question.
No. I think that sounds great.
Hi, everybody. I'm William O'Brien Jr. I'm the director of the M.Arch program. I'll share my screen in just a minute to walk you through the things we're thinking about vis-a-vis the curriculum. But just to address that question, and I think it touches on Ryan's earlier question as well. We certainly do admit a wide diversity of students with different backgrounds. And maybe one of the ways that we celebrate that diversity is in the way that we aim to teach. And I can speak specifically to the Core 1 Studio, which I'll contextualize a bit more in just a moment. But I coordinate the Core 1 Studio. And one thing that we're really keen to do, in part, we're able to do it because of its size. It's about 20 students, 18, 20, sometimes 23 students. We're able to teach in two ways. One is to the overall cohort, where we're trying to teach the cohort the fundamentals now, contemporaneously and now, while at the same time trying to pull out of each of the students certain experiences, certain biases that make them who they are in order to contribute to a broader conversation. So oftentimes we're talking about how we can, on the one hand, produce a culture across the cohort through sort of fundamentals that are shared, while at the same time producing individuals with agendas. And I think it's a difficult thing to do in larger programs. And I think it's something that we can do and do well, both because of the size of the program, the way that we teach, and also the way that we reflect that same diversity as a faculty. So maybe that provides us in a nice segue into the second part, where I will share some thoughts about the curriculum. Okay, I think everyone should be able to see that. Great. As I said, I'm William O'Brien Jr. I not only do I direct the M.Arch program, I also have a small practice here in Cambridge called Woodger, and there's a lot of overlap between the things that we think about at Woodger and the way that we try to imagine the curriculum and the future of the discipline within MIT. Nicholas touched on this a bit, but I wanted to draw it out, and I think it'll relate to the way that we think about the curriculum. We're unusual in the sense that we are, our department is comprised of discipline groups, and those discipline groups weave together to produce a kind of tapestry of knowledge and research that our students experience. But at the same time, our discipline groups enable a kind of depth that is rare within most departments. So we have Aga Khan, computation, art, culture, technology, history, theory, criticism, building technology. And we also have one called A+U, which is architecture and urbanism. And then there's also a special cell type that will make more sense in just a moment, which is red, which is the way that we think, the way that we code our studios. The program I'm talking about is our M.Arch, which is a studio-centric program, our professional program. It's 3.5 years. And just a little bit more of a key for you. When you see single cell colors, those are related to the discipline group. When you see a hybrid, the idea is that we're thinking about 2 of those discipline groups combining to produce a course. And then any flags that are have gray are our electives. And I really want to get across to you the way that we think about the relationship between the required courses in the curriculum and the electives. We're really trying to make new kinds of architects that take advantage of this unusual space that we occupy as a professional program within one of the world's leading research institutes. This is in 3 parts, and I want to talk about the beginning and the end of the program, and then I'll talk about the middle of the program in 2 ways, through required courses and electives, and hopefully paint a clear and coherent picture as to how we're thinking about this. So as I mentioned, this is currently a 3.5-year program, and this is the framework. And it's not accidental that the upper right-hand corner of the grid is missing. That's an idea about coursework tapering, so that we're allowing the students to focus more on their thesis work toward the end of their time here, and also opening up increasing opportunities for teaching assistantships. We are a program that takes our teaching assistantships extremely seriously, and think about those opportunities as really molding the future pedagogues, of our discipline. So not only is that about allowing you to kind of foster your own agenda toward the end of the curriculum through professional practice and through your thesis project, but also opening up time for you to become more involved in assisting other courses. So we're quite careful about the beginning and the end. We're really interested in helping our students orient themselves to our program. And then, as you'll see in a moment, orienting our students out into the world. And so we've placed a lot of emphasis and focus and thought around how students arrive at MIT, and really thinking about exposing them to all of the discipline groups and helping them understand what's available to them that's distinct from other places at MIT, while at the same time rooting them, helping them discover the department, the institute, Cambridge, if it's new to you. So there's a lot of thought going into how that orientation is staged. At the same time, we're interested, after you've completed the required courses and the electives, we're really interested in how to send you off in a way that is reflective of the work that you've done here and the career trajectory that you've been focusing on. And one way that we're interested in doing that is the thesis here is your kind of intellectual project, and the way that we think about professional practice is really as a kind of career design. And so we're really interested in having those 2 types of thinking about a career trajectory, the kind of intellectual project and the career design aspect of that project, happen simultaneously, so that in an effort to produce new kinds of architects who are contributing to the discipline, also contributing to research, and the profession, that we're not separating those two ways of thinking, but they are integral, synonymous, happening at the same time. And each of those courses are kind of hyper aware, increasingly hyper aware of what is happening in the other course. And so we can think about required courses in this way. We are hoping that the required courses are as sort of concentrated and robust as possible. And the reason we aim for that is because we want students to take advantage of what is uniquely MIT. And we want students to find new forms of hybridity between the professional education and many, many other things. And so you'll see here, these blocks represent a limited number of required courses, and they're arranged like this. So we have a few different strands, and the hope is that there is, on the one hand, a kind of horizontal continuity within discipline groups. So by horizontal, I mean, moving across through time. And then there's a kind of a vertical integration that's moving across within a given semester at key moments, at the beginning especially, and at the end. The strands that we have are a computation strand, and in there you're thinking about all things computation and to some extent representation, and to some extent considering geometry. In HTC, history, theory, criticism, there's a lot of thinking about the making of cities, kind of positioning a practice critically, contemporaneously. And then in building technology, we're thinking about all things through structure, environmental systems, architectural assemblies. And so the idea is that there's some continuity across each of these different strands that periodically can vertically integrate into the things that you're thinking about in studio. For instance, just as one example, there's quite a robust overlap between the Core 3 studio, which is kind of an integrated studio, and our BT faculty. And we're trying to open up that way of hybridizing and having that become the norm rather than the exception. So, if you were to come, you're going to see a lot of overlap between these our core studios and our other strands. So we do have a 3 studio core sequence, which is unlike other programs. We focused in the past a lot on how to densify that and include more within the 3 core studios. And that's not only because we think we can do that as a faculty, but also because we want to open up the next 3 studios as option studios. So we're really keen to expose our students to 3 option studios rather than 2. The one more makes a world of difference and really allows students to think about why they're doing what they're doing after they've tried on the pedagogical hats of 3 instructors in order to really help them frame their own thesis, which happens at the end. Our option studios, Nicholas touched on it, are extremely varied, and they range from interests in, let's say, architecture with a capital A, where form, representation, space, part-to-whole relationships are considered, all the way to thinking about making architecture in space, or thinking about adaptive reuse, or thinking about the way that we can think differently about making through questions of carbon and much more. Typically, we have a diverse group of instructors, some of whom are from MIT, some of whom are from the outside world. So that's always a kind of careful curation to try to get the right balance of external voices, internal voices, and the widest diversity of thinking that dovetails with what we offer at MIT. So this might be what the required course sort of block stack up looks like before we get into all of the electives. So as I mentioned before, if any department can imagine a new kind of architect, I would make the argument that it is MIT's Department of Architecture because of how we are so uniquely situated, thinking professionally, but also housed in a research institute. We've given great thought to how and when these electives take place. So during the first year, we think it's super important that we're grounding you and we're exposing you to things that happen at MIT, and you're, becoming acclimated to the department, the institute, Cambridge, etc. And it's really in the third semester when students feel grounded enough to be able to take on a first elective. The fourth semester, there are 2, fifth semester, 3. And so the hope is that if there's a particular interest that's discovered over the course of the 4 semesters between 3 and 6, a student can get really, really deeply in to that subject. And likewise, as one's kind of gearing up for their thesis, to have a semester right before thesis prep where you have 3 electives allows you to kind of shape your thinking, your work in preparation for that year of thesis prep and thesis. We do think about, as I alluded to earlier, we think about how to expose our students to the discipline groups early on so that they know what's coming and they know it's possible. And so there's a little taste of the discipline groups within the context of the Core 1 studio. In terms of electives, we have electives within the department, within the School of Architecture and Planning, and also within the Institute. And these don't represent all of the potential electives, but some of them. So the first, say, 6 or so, AgaCon, Computation, Art, Culture, Technology, History, Theory, Criticism, Building Technology, A+U, those are all within the department. And then you start to get into other ones that are within the school, Department of Urban Studies and Planning, Real Estate, and then there are some within the Institute, Mechanical Engineering, Electrical Engineering, Computer Science, and Sloan Business School. So this is just a taste, but just to give you a sense for the different sort of radii of potential inclusion that your electives might come from. So imagine this is, one half or 1/3 of the electives that might be offered to you. We're interested in helping you navigate through the departmental electives and other electives. And you see the ones on the left, we're starting to get organized around departmental and institute and school on the right. But our earnest hope is that you see these electives as an opportunity to develop your own, with the help, obviously, of an academic advisor and mentors that you meet along the way. We aspire for you to identify your own constellations of courses that produce an architect that is uniquely you. So imagine that each of you has a kind of, we call it like a kind of thumbprint, a sort of elective thumbprint that allows you to become an architect that is taking advantage of all that is at MIT in order so that you become the best version of yourself. And there's lots of ways that one can navigate these. And if one, for example, is extremely interested in modes of representation, form and space, things like this, students are welcome to have all of those electives come from within the department, hovering around architecture and urbanism, hovering around computation. Equally, we're excited about students who are sort of stretching what it means to be an architect by taking advantage of institutional electives. And, for example, we're just kind of imagining different possibilities. What would it mean to combine computation, A+U, mechanical engineering, and electrical engineering and computer science, in addition to all the required courses. So, there's kind of endless possibilities in terms of what those electives could could produce as a student, as somebody who will contribute to the future of architecture in a new way. So you can think about what we see here as a sort of not yet activated curriculum chart that can then become activated through your own wayfinding at MIT once you arrive and once you start to understand who you are within MIT. So maybe I'll pause there, and I'd love to hear what kinds of questions you might have.
Hi. Sorry, it's me again. I just had a small question. You did say, like, how we are free to choose our own path and everything, and how we can take courses that inform our decision, which is very interesting. I also wanted to that just made me think about also like panels and events you guys have, such as like advances in architectural geometry, and then there's also, I'm sure you guys have a lot of kind of connections with Acadia as well. And so how often do you see students get inspired by, or kind of from these events foster some kind of connection with the panelists or the event organizers, which then kind of blossom into something that influences their own thesis as well at the end?
All the time. I mean, I think we see students, I mean, that happens in a number of different ways, Ryan. I think sometimes we see students who, for example, work on a thesis together and then spin off to become an office that's working on, rooftops in Paris, which comes to mind. Sometimes we see students working closely with a faculty member, to produce a work for an Acadia workshop, and then that becomes a path towards, an interest that then becomes a SMArchS degree. The number of possibilities in terms of like MIT Department of Architecture as a kind of like hotbed of students with interests that are like quickly becoming taken seriously outside within the discipline is staggering. And I think that's both because of the talent and brilliance of the students, but it's also, I think, a byproduct of how closely our students and faculty work together. Like, I would say MIT faculty are remarkably accessible, and there's a kind of fluidity and informality that is, I think, on brand in terms of the MIT identity that carries into the department. There's a sort of blurriness hierarchically between where faculty and where students are, which produces a lot of collaboration and for sure gets our students out into the world producing amazing work on the world stage, like really, really quickly.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question regarding the structure of the core studios. So I'm wondering if like the kind of projects that core studios develop are expected to be completed within the period of said core studio, or is it possible for a student to kind of pursue the same question or the same topic throughout multiple core studios?
Oh, good question. Right. So our core studios, there are 3 of them. And I would say that the coursework, the projects within the core studios are increasing in terms of time, complexity, modes of representation, within, I would say first across all of the 3 core studios. So they're taken in sequence, obviously, and they are thought of as courses that are, have a beginning and a conclusion. The one way to think about the core studios is it's a little bit of an oversimplification because there's a lot of layers to each of the studios, but the first studio is a lot about orientation. It's about modes of representation. It's concerned with an increased understanding of agency in architecture, first through the department, then the institute, then in Cambridge and Boston. We're thinking a lot about, you know, how, as I mentioned before, how to simultaneously build up the culture of the cohort while at the same time fostering individual identities. And then the second, if the first one's sort of about form, representation, and orientation, the second is about usually takes on a more public program, one that's like at an urban scale, usually social, sometimes political issues are invoked. And then the third studio is even sort of more complex, larger, thinks about both a kind of territorial scale and a building scale, and is about systems and building integration and structures. So each of the core studios have a sort of dedicated theme and focus and responsibility in terms of what they contribute to the students' learning. But at the same time, there's a kind of overall arc that links them together. And sort of a long-winded way of saying, yeah, they're contained, and the courses and the assignments are completed within the duration of the studio. That being said, the things that you're introduced to, can be continued either in independent studies or workshops, or for sure, through thesis work. And I have seen many times like a student really fall in love with a way of thinking or a problem in the early studios that then becomes the basis for the thesis work, toward the end of their time.
Okay, thank you.
Liam, we have a question in the chat that maybe you can answer directly. It says, can you talk a bit about how the M.Arch program exposes students to international social issues and region-specific architecture?
International social issues. Well, I would sort of separate them in order to combine them again. I mean, I think we are thinking about social issues in various parts of the curriculum, for sure, during the second semester in core, and then in a variety of different ways throughout the option studios. In terms of, where those issues are sort of identified and worked on, our studios take place all around the world. We have some which are local for good reason, but we also are aware that like the best architects are those who understand a myriad of cultures and are able to contribute once learning about a given culture. And so it's important to us to make sure that our students are exposed to a wide range of cultures in order that they can be well versed and in turn, produce architectural utterances that are appropriate and in dialogue with these different cultures.
I'll just speak to the thesis question in the chat. I think it's probably, Ryan, best to understand that a thesis topic really develops as a multi-year conversation. And so it's not like you wake up one morning 3 years into your degree and decide, oh, I'm really interested in apple orchards. You'll have been thinking about apple orchards for a long time, and maybe, been funded to travel to Kazakhstan, home of the apple and apple cultivation historically, and you'll have, discovered which faculty are interested in talking to you about apples, and we have an administrative process that we wrap around that. But as Liam emphasized, we're a small program. You're one of 24 students, and talking with an equal number of a larger number of faculty over the course of several years. And so we are, what we enjoy most about being here is the ability to sustain and develop those kinds of long-term conversations, and to obviously have landmarks and procedures that help us organize the very intense process of getting an architecture degree. But we prioritize those personal conversations and relationships, and have really the luxury and privilege of doing that here. And so that is, also an answer to your question that's equally valid than Tessa's. Both are true, but it characterizes. But I wanted to particularly characterize that this is a place where we're privileged to primarily have conversations with each other about things versus fill in forms.
Hello. Hi. Uh, I am Rishikesh from Mumbai. I have a question. Uh, Being a professional degree, does having any work experience add up to the application process, or in any sense, does it make much sense, or is it viable in a sense to perceive after having certain professional experience to get into M.Arch, or it's really like.
Thanks for the question. We want to bring those students who, I think Nicholas always says this, which I've heard many times, which I agree with. The students for whom MIT will be the most impactful are the students we want at MIT. And why I like that way of phrasing it is because it allows for the admissions committee to be looking for passion, enthusiasm, creative potential, drive, these things which don't necessarily rely on a particular set of experiences, but can be found kind of irrespective of background, irrespective of the amount of architecture one's been exposed to. So to answer your question, work experience might be helpful to one kind of student who we would love to admit. In that same breath, a student with zero experience who can make a case for why MIT is important for them and why they can be impactful and contribute to the community, is equally as exciting of a candidate.
Yeah. In addition, I have one more question. Like, that's a doubt in my mind, in a sense. Coming as an international student, if I end up having a thesis topic which is located or it's geographically connected back to India or Bombay, how does it work in that sense? Does it benefit in any sense, or it encounter, or is it not beneficial to choose a site which is like far off or something?
No. We have thesis projects that are cited all over the world, and it would have no bearing. So I wouldn't let that be a concern of yours at this moment.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam, for your time and your presentation on our M.Arch program. We're going to turn it over now to Brandon Clifford, our director of our SMArchS program, who will give us a presentation about that.
Okay, hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Yeah, I'm Brandon Clifford. I'm the director of the SMArchS program. Today I'm going to introduce the program, and I think the best way to understand what we're doing right now is looking at the program writ large, because there are breakout sessions throughout the day to focus in on the individual groups. As you will discover, and as we've already been using these kind of acronyms for the different groups, SMArchS is a degree, it's a singular degree, but it's really managed by the discrete discipline groups. So today I want to make sure you have a good understanding of what the program is, how it's distinguished from other programs you might be looking at, and we'll try and save time at the end for any questions that you have. Because Nicholas already used my quote, unfortunately, I do think this is important because in conceiving of the first school of architecture in the United States, architect William Ware pledged MIT to a very important task of producing architecture and architects who are worthy of the future. And future is always part of the architect's perspective task, but Ware is binding architecture and the future through a form of qualitative judgment. He's inviting us to contemplate futures worth living and architectures worthy of those futures, but also the criteria for evaluating. So the Masters of Science in Architectural Studies, it's a 2-year program in advanced study founded on research and inquiry in architecture as a discipline and as a practice. The program's intended for both students who already have professional degrees in architecture and those interested in an advanced non-professional graduate study. And this is going to have a different emphasis depending on what group you're being sorted into in your application process. So the focus of the spectrum on both of those ends will really be elaborated on in the breakout sessions. This is a degree that prepares students for careers in a broad range of fields. And I just want to emphasize what Liam already set up in our sibling program at the M.Arch degree. We are thinking about producing future architects that can engage in the future through research, through design, industry, art, teaching, as well as practice. And that's an advantage that we have as a smaller program that focuses in on the individual. So the SMArchS program is a laboratory in which we speculate on diverse forms of agency for architecture's future. Together, MIT faculty, guest critics, and students cultivate expertise, sensibilities, and critical questioning necessary to deliver a range of outcomes, whether they be architectural objects with specific effects, architecture as an active participant in the production of urban fabric and material culture, an understanding of shaping of political and environmental territories, architecture as the agent of industry's transformation, architecture as a means to address large societal questions, to critically intervene in discourse, and to induce hesitation in various practices of our daily lives, rewriting the patterns of understanding and living. So we have a big task in front of us, and we do that through our plurality. You've been hearing these various terms, and I want to dig into those a little bit. I think it might be useful to understand the SMArchS degree relative to its sibling program, which Liam just introduced, because the Department of Architecture is composed of a range of discipline groups. The M.Arch program is supported by all of these groups, and the SMArchS program is focused within the individual groups, allowing for cross-pollination and contamination through the individual. So we have the SMArchS Architectural Design Group directed by yours truly. We also have Urbanism designed by or directed by Rania Gosen, who I believe is here, and Rania can join me in answering any questions that we have. We also have the Building Technology Group directed by Caitlin Mueller. Computation with Larry Sass. History, Theory, and Criticism with Arindam Dutta. And the Aga Khan program in Islamic Studies of Architecture with Nasser Rabat. So together, these form the SMArchS Curriculum Committee. These are the directors of the program. And I just want to point out that our community at MIT is composed of a broad range of individuals and groups, from building scientists to designers, humanists, artists, urbanists, computational specialists, fabrication experts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could have a definition for every person that exists here, let alone the groups. So each of us are advancing an agenda, students and faculty alike, not in service of a previously determined idea of what architecture is, but in pursuit of what architecture could be. And the quote that I always loved is a former department head, Mi Jin Yoon, once said that our strength resides in our plurality. And that's an ethos that's concentrated within the SMArchS degree program. And I think, really what she meant by that is there are architecture schools where you will have a practicing architect that can also teach structures. Here at MIT, we have a world-class architectural engineer who is engaged in building science and research, who's engaging M.Arch students and SMArchS students and PhD candidates alike. So we have incredible colleagues here. Here is the curriculum, and you can see the curriculum is not universal. It's broken down into each one of the discipline groups, but there are a few commonalities that I'll point out. A few commonalities is that each discipline group has about 3 to 6 required classes over the course of the 2 years. These required classes generally include something like thesis prep and thesis. There's also a colloquium, which you'll find if you can see my cursor. The colloquium is shared across all the discipline groups. Upon entry into the program, the entire cohort of SMArchS students join together in the colloquium to learn about each other's individual interests, as well as the work that's happening in the different groups, so that we're not exclusively siloed throughout the 2 years. That class helps set the groundwork in the discipline that you're entering. We have methods courses as well that establish an understanding not only of the SMArchS program writ large, but what's particular to your discipline. Urbanism happens to be the only group that's currently requiring a studio, and studio is optional for other groups. They're available to take if you like. But this is something that I could point out to maybe distinguish the SMArchS program from other M.Arch 2 programs at our peer institutions where a studio would be required for the M.Arch 2. We have these bookends of the curriculum, which is on one end, upon entry, you have the colloquium where you're gathering together with all of your cohorts. And on the other end is thesis. Those are the 2 strands that are really binding together each one of the groups. I'll share this slide because each one of the groups has determined a path that mentors their candidates towards their individual pursuits best. Some of them assign a thesis advisor upon entry, building technology and history, theory, and criticism, find that's most applicable to their discipline. And other disciplines find that maybe in the 3rd semester is the best time after sampling and engaging in research. It's the best time to find an advisor. But I share this slide largely to point out that the SMArchS program is one individual program, but there's a lot of agency within the individual groups to ensure that you're succeeding in the field that you're establishing. So a few statistics. I know there was a question earlier about how many students are in the M.Arch program. Right now, we have 50 SMArchS students across both years, so about 25 per year. And you can see the breakdown of the individual groups. Some of the groups prefer a tighter cohort, and others prefer a larger cohort, depending on the types of conversations and focus on the individual. So I would just encourage you to attend those breakout sessions so you get a better understanding of those foci. So now I'm going to share just a few slides on auto, but SMArchS produce a wide range of outputs, and you're engaging with M.Arch students as well through TA-ships and travel. We have the opportunity to engage in research assistantships, teaching assistantships, your own individual grant writing opportunities to advance your own agenda. And we also have an output, for instance, Zach Cohen here is producing 3D printing. He went on to get a fellowship at Michigan immediately after leaving. Here we have Mariana Gonzalez Cervantes, who is now teaching at Texas Tech. Zach Cohen, immediately upon graduating, was teaching in both New York and Princeton while advancing his research. There are plenty of opportunities for travel, and I think now might be a good time, having done an overview of the SMArchS program and trying to encourage you to attend the individual breakout sessions, to start answering questions and turn this into a dialogue while examples of student work continue to play.
Hi, I guess I have a broad question. It seems like the SMArchS program and the M.Arch program, you can focus on research or like go into practice after. Do you have kind of like a general reason why you would choose one or the other?
I think, the advantage of a small community is the ability to focus on an individual pursuit and mentor you towards what is the best outcome of your goals. Oftentimes through that mentorship, the question surrounds, what is the kind of impact that you want to have? Is that impact best delivered through an academic career, through engagement directly with industry? Is it possible that professional practice is the best pursuit, or maybe curatorial studies? In order to answer that question, maybe I should say there are two broad buckets that we could think of advanced study in higher education. One would be professional education, which is largely not about you, it's about society. The kinds of things that we need to know to ensure that professionals in the world, like doctors and lawyers and architects, they need to know some things before they start practicing. So that education is about society writ large. But the other form of higher education would be mastery education, which is largely about you and something that you're developing as an individual. The M.Arch program, one of the reasons why all Masters of Architecture programs that are professional, why they take so long, is because they're doing both of those things. The SMArchS program is really focused on the mastery side. So there's a heavy emphasis on the individual. And I think I'm answering that question in a roundabout way, but what I would say is that our structure ensures that there are several layers of mentorship to help you make decisions about what are your goals in your career moving beyond, and how we can use your time here at MIT as a launch pad to get you pointed in the right direction to succeed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Brandon. First off, thank you so much for this morning. I just wanted to kind of confirm that it seems like developing research and kind of testing and presenting your thesis is kind of a key aspect of the last 3 semesters of the AD program. I see that the first spring semester has no required classes, so I'm kind of asking, is there a thesis focus on that semester as well?
The first semester is the methods. Oh, excuse me. Just clicking out of here. Yeah, the first semester is a methods course where you're engaging in what are the methods of research that can start to develop that research agenda. And these are all really pointing towards thesis, not as an end goal to complete and wrap a bow around something, but really to serve that as the launching pad, as I was just describing.
Thank you so much. And kind of just a follow-up question. I'm curious if you have any perspective on what makes a good candidate for these programs. I obviously know it's a holistic process, but over the course of time, is there anything that you find specifically that makes a good candidate?
Yeah, I would reinforce what Liam was saying. We are really looking for a diverse range of candidates to constitute a community and have informed conversations that are not siloed and isolated or just like-minded. So there's not one kind of candidate that we're looking for. And the way to hear that, I think, would be to say, put forward an application where the statement and the portfolio reinforce who you are, what you're bringing to the table, and what your aspirations are going forward. So we're looking for individual understanding.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Brandon. I wanted to ask where there are different groups in SMArchS program. There's like A plus U, there is like computation, and could we like have a dual degree that we like combine like different groups together? Does that work?
Can I pass this to Kateri on the logistics of dual degrees in SMArchS, and then I'll kind of answer it more holistically. And Rania, please jump in.
Great.
Sure. So I'm the graduate administrator for the master's programs in architecture. So we don't typically have dual degrees between SMArchS programs, but because of the flexibility of the program, I mean, out of 96 credits across 3 to 4 semesters, that really encourages students to explore the breadth of both the department and the wider offerings. I mean, you'll see on the curriculum chart that Brandon is showing that there's between 4 and 6 classes in area of interest, which really can be anything that you are developing as part of your mentorship trajectory with your advisor. So while dual degrees do exist between different programs in architecture and other departments, we don't find that it needs to happen with the SMArchS program in particular, just because there is so much encouragement to explore.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's useful to think of the discipline group that you are pursuing the degree within as a framework and a method for exploring your own individual discipline. So you're not bound to only engage in topics that exist within that discipline group. In fact, you can TA a studio if you're a computation SMArchS. You can engage in a research assistantship position with faculty in any one of the groups. You can join together with one of your cohort that you meet in the colloquium to develop a startup together. I mean, there's really a fair amount of cross-pollination that exists between the programs on the individual basis. And when we think about the larger structure, it's useful to understand that they're isolated within the different discipline groups. But I wouldn't want to convey the idea that you're locked into one field.
Yeah, let me speak to that point in particular. I think I arrived in the department 5 years ago, having spent most of my career elsewhere, and I hadn't really heard of the term discipline group before I got here. And I honestly didn't need to. And I actually think sometimes we overemphasize it when we try and explain the department to people. What it really just means is that we have groups of faculty experts in different areas. And especially our research degrees like SMArchS and PhD involve students concentrating in one of those areas and working with faculty in that area on that concentration. But just like concentration is a word that conveys a kind of attention. There's lots of other things that people do here involving all the faculty, and in fact, most of the really interesting things we do involve different kinds of people with different kinds of expertise, either students or faculty, or even staff in different ways, mixing together and creating projects. So I wouldn't honestly get too caught up in the idea of these discipline groups or concentrations as things that restrict you. It's more like they give you a home base in the department, a kind of literally a house on the street that you can return to, but you go into all the other houses as well, and they're all actually interconnected on the inside as well. And many of our faculty, especially many of our recent hires, in fact, have associations with different groups. So it's not like it even restricts our faculty's identity. Just to Yasmin and Sakib's questions, the computation is actually has a very open and generous sense of thinking about computation in the world in a whole variety of different ways. So I'm sure I can speak for them if I say I wouldn't discourage anyone from applying to that program based on a presumption about their background or computational skills.
So Angela is asking a question about, are there opportunities to explore complexity thinking moving towards SMArchS thesis? And the thesis at MIT, the thesis is required for any master's degree at MIT, let's say. So you'll find it in both the M.Arch and the SMArchS. They're individual thesis topics. So the topic is developed by you in combination with an advisor that you're also selecting. So the world is wide open regarding what kind of topics are on the table to explore in thesis.
And MIT has many experts in complexity science in both, actually in both the sciences and across different disciplines.
I think I mentioned also that every thesis is advised by a committee of 2 to 3 people, and it's possible to have an advisor within the architecture department within your group, but also find readers that are maybe in brain and cognitive science or political science or whatever is most applicable to advancing your field of study. Oh, and Rania has added a link to a document with several thesis projects. Thanks, Rania.
Hi, I have a question regarding the research programs that Nicholas mentioned earlier, specifically like odds and mods as a project. Where does that fit within the SMArchS curriculum or course structure? Specifically for the architecture design.
So, do you want to take that, Brandon? Maybe you can.
Yeah, I could take that because so for instance, the climate research studio Odds and Mods that was led by Caitlin Mueller and Sheila Kennedy, there is a studio component which the M.Arch program is a requirement to take studios. So that's servicing those students. It's possible as a SMArchS student to take that studio. There was also a companion research workshop that made sense for SMArchS to engage, but then there are also research assistantships that are tied to this. So there's kind of like a full frontal research lab that forms these initiatives. Starting this spring, Timothy Hyde and I are launching the Temporal Commons, which is going to be yet another one of these research labs. And the Temporal Commons will have a studio component, but it will also invite SMArchS in for a research workshop that operates in tandem, and we'll be hiring research assistantships. And the premise of the Temporal Commons is that we as a society are entering into a world of profound change, and yet the foundations of architecture are developed under an idea of stability. We really need to think of a way of developing architecture that coordinates itself relative to time. And we build structures assuming that they are permanent, and yet the average building only lasts 30 to 60 years, which is a reflection of our own mortality more so than the capability of a building to withstand. So they're engineered to last several hundred years, but they're demolished out of obsolescence too soon. So the premise that Timothy and I are taking is that we need to reconsider the design approaches and the theoretical framing with which an entire profession is producing the built environment. And we're establishing time as the next frontier for sustainable thinking in architecture. So there are opportunities to engage as SMArchS students, not only through the studio, but in concert with this research agenda that's moving forward. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you. I actually have one more question. In terms of the SMArchS program, is it part of the expectations that students should come in with like a framework in mind that they want to develop, or is that something? Can you hear me?
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. Is for SMArchS students, is there an expectation that they should come in with a theoretical framework in mind or a question that they want to pursue, given that it's a shorter program than the M.Arch?
I can answer that in two ways. One answer is yes, the other answer is no, with a major caveat that I highly recommend asking that question within the individual discipline group breakout session. I would say that yes, it is largely to your advantage to have a project in mind, an area of study, something that's itching you. Why else would you go back to have a degree in higher education if there was not something that was motivating you? And we want to hear that. The no answer to that would be that you would not be locked in your application to say that this is the thing that I'm going to research. That is a topic, that's an exercise for you to be able to establish a position and clarify why it is that you're looking to pursue a degree here. But as you move through your degree, you should also have the liberty and freedom to be able to shape, adjust, pivot as you move forward towards your thesis and beyond. So I think the answer is we are looking for, in the application project, clear proposals of why it is that MIT is a suitable place for you to advance an agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right, these are great questions.
I have a question. Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask that since this M.Arch and SMArchS program, does this have like an affiliation with MIT Media Labs? Because in my bachelor's thesis, I kind of explored speculative architecture in terms of virtual reality and metaverse. And I want to pursue that in my master's degree. So do you think, I mean, in M.Arch or like SMArchS, I can work on this particular subject?
Of course, I would say yes, every subject is on the table to explore within the SMArchS degree. There are many opportunities to engage with the Media Lab. Maybe I'll pass it to Nicholas to talk about how that's stitched together at the departmental level.
Yeah, so as I said, the architecture department and the Media Lab have a long history that goes back to the Media Lab's founding. And the Media Lab in many ways takes the studio model of research from the department and develops it across many non-architectural fields, you know, these days from biology to public art and everything in between. The Media Lab is primarily a research-based organization, and many of our students join Media labs as research assistants and work on projects there, you know, particularly where their expertise as either architecture students or expertise they bring from previous experiences are useful. In addition, the Media Lab does teach courses at the graduate level Again, a lot of students end up taking those as electives either in the M.Arch or SMArchS programs as well. For example, we actually co-teach a section of the Media Lab class, How to Make Almost Anything, which is a class that goes across different scales of manufacturing, from the nanoscale to the architectural scale, which many of our students really enjoy as an introduction to thinking about fabrication.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate your time and
Great.
attention to
Thanks,
us.
everyone.
We will now continue with Darren, who will give us some quick review of the application process and answer a lot of the frequently asked questions that we get for the overall application and general questions that we get for the process. Darren, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So yes, I work closely with Tessa and Kateri in student services with the application process, and I also work with a number of other staff people who are housed in each of our different discipline groups. So when you write to the arch@mit.edu email, we will all get those emails, and the person who's most relevant to that email will answer you. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. So, and this is our website. The reason I'm pointing here is because there's two key pieces that are important when you're applying. The first is down here in the hamburger menu under the handbook, and it is the graduate programs. So in here, you will find a list of all the programs.
Darren froze. He'll be back with us in just a moment.
Many cases for current students to manage their programs. And so that's a great place to begin your research. The second place that you can go is here under admissions, and of course the graduate admissions. And this is, hopefully you've been here already. You probably got the link to the open house here. So this is a place where you can find out much more specific information about the application process and how that process pertains to the program that you are applying to. So it varies a little bit depending on which program that you're applying to. So down here, more specifically, we break down a lot of the commonly asked questions. So we have details here about the recommendation letters, about the transcripts from your schools. I'll highlight the English test score requirement has changed this year. It's been updated for some time now, so I think you probably have seen the updated information. We are now accepting the Duolingo test, which might make some people happy because I think it's more available in some places. We're also adopting MIT's general English testing requirements. So all of our programs are now under the 100 for internet-based tests. For the TOEFL, we are 7 on the IELTS, and the Duolingo, I think it was listed up above. The Duolingo minimum score of 135. Oh, and also we recently, a couple of years ago, began accepting the Cambridge English exams as well. So there's a number of options for you. We do not have waivers, and so that information is all something that you would upload to the system. You do not need to have your official scores submitted when you are applying. So hopefully that saves you some money. We will take your word for it. The score has to be valid as of 2 years of your application date. So the application opens September 15th. So as long as your score is valid 2 years before September 15th of 2025, we will accept those scores. If it is expired, we are unable to validate those scores. So we unfortunately cannot accept expired scores. The other information is all listed in here, so it's specific to the program. And if you find yourself in a financial hardship, you could apply for a fee waiver through the Office of Graduate Education. That waiver system is through the application. So if you are applying, while you're in there, there's a place in the application fee area to request a waiver of the fee, and that will route you through a form that you can fill out through the Graduate Education Office. And if you do not qualify for any of the Graduate Education Office waivers, then it will forward you to the Department of Architecture waiver system. So that's just to alert you of where that information is found. And then down here, we have even more specific information for each of the programs broken down. So the first most important thing for you is to figure out which program interests you the most, review the requirements to make sure that you're required for it, and then review the application instructions for that specific program. The application is open currently until January 7th of 2026. We begin review shortly thereafter with the faculty, and that review process is different for each of the degree programs. So they all follow their own schedule into the spring, but we do have a list of, I'm going to go quickly at the top of this, the admissions timeline that you can refer to. And we will put any updates up here along the process. So in general, that is how you would apply. Now, when you do apply, the link is on there to apply to mit.edu/apply. And in there, you would create a profile for MIT. And from that profile, you launch any applications that you'd like to apply. So you could apply to the Department of Urban Studies and Planning and Architecture in 2 separate applications. You can even create an application for the M.Arch program and for the SMArchS program if you find yourself qualified and interested in both. So that is the process in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions about applying?
I have a question about the TOEFL and the English requirement. I went to high school here, but I would be applying as an international student. So my question is, would I be required like those tests?
If you are a native English speaker, in general, that would qualify you to not have to take the TOEFL. I mean, that's the bottom line. I do have a link here to the MIT's policy specifically, so I'll put that in the chat. So that explains the policy. There's a section for international applicants, and if you find yourself with any other questions, you can always write to either me directly or to arch@mit.edu.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So I do have an undergrad degree and also a master's degree from the state. Will this be qualified for the exceptions?
In general, no. That's always been a no. But now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if MIT's policy allows for that. I'm sorry, I might have to review the information, but I believe they're allowing that now. But it would take a further review of the policy. I'm sorry.
Is that also stated in the link that you shared in the chat?
Yeah, that link has all of the information about the MIT policy. We previously had a number of different policies within our department for a number of different programs, and that just became untenable. So we've adopted a general MIT policy that I think makes it easier for applicants to understand.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding what do you mean by native English speaking people. Like I have studied all my life in English medium throughout my schools. I'm coming from India now. Do I need to take that test, or because all my education has been through English as a language?
Yeah, is what would qualify you. Yes.
So I initially don't require to take any TOEFLs.
No, if you were raised in an English speaking environment and taught in English your whole life, then you're a native English speaker.
Cool. Thanks.
And likewise, if you were raised in the United States, but in a completely non-English speaking community, then you would need it. It doesn't have anything to do with citizenship. It's about your personal experience.
So as a document, my transcripts from all my things can verify that I'm an English medium educated person, or like how do I testify that?
You state your native language in the application system.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Well, I have another question. So in the link that you shared, it says if I meet all the requirements to be waived for the TOEFL score, it's gonna be automatically extended. What does the automatically extend mean?
I'm sorry, automatic? Is that what it said?
Yeah.
I think that means that the system will just adopt and allow you to apply.
So once I submit my transcripts so once I submit all the transcripts, will it be automatically waived?
No, it has to do with filling out the waiver form. Or, well, no, you're talking about English language test?
Yeah.
There's no waiver, so you would just fill out the application information, and if it requires the test, it will require it based on your native language and the answers that you've given. It's not going to review your information. M.Arch advanced placement, no. The M.Arch program needs to be completed in the 3.5 years. There's no advanced placement for that. You can, however, apply for waivers of some of the required electives and in place of them take electives of your choice if you've already had that coursework in another program.
Hi, Darren. Thanks for the introduction. So I was just looking at the webpage on the Office of Graduate Education, and it says that there is a policy that says within the last 5 years, if you attend the English-speaking university for 3 to 4 years, that you're exempt from the, I guess, the test requirements. Do you know if that's also applied to our case?
Yes, that is. Thank you for finding that. Yeah, that is the policy that we've adopted.
All right. Thank you, Darren. If people have other questions, you can continue to drop them in the chat and we will try to continue answering them. Now we are going to move on to Nandini, who is going to talk a little bit about some of our programs to help support applicants.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As Tessa kindly introduced, my name is Nandini Chowdhury. I am the Community Building and Student Engagement Officer for the department. I just shared my screen. Can everybody see that? If folks can give me a thumbs up. Yay. Okay, perfect. So today I'm just going to talk to you all a little bit about some of our support networks and community building pieces that we offer within the department, including some activities and programs that you as students can be a part of and what our current students are a part of when it comes to community building and engaging on the student level in the department. I also work closely with Tessa Kateri, so we work closely together in the realm of student support. So we're like the core unit that are here to help you all once you arrive on campus. So this is the team. It's made up of myself and an RA that I have every year. And this year, my RA is a thesis M.Arch student named Alyssa Soroso. And together we kind of run the office and help manage some of our programs and connecting with students. And overall, my office really works with the department to commit to building a good community and engagement throughout the academic year. And my office helps with hiring and the admissions process around some curriculum development and teaching and how we create a good learning environment within our classrooms, labs, and studios, as well as carving out space for student advocacy and uplifting your voices. So some areas of focus that I work on, one of them is outreach and recruitment. So I travel a lot at different conferences that centralize on architecture and urban planning, as well as visiting campuses such as Tuskegee University, which I'll get into in a little bit. I support with student admissions, so working with Darren, Tessa, and Kateri and our faculty and admissions committee on some of the admission processes. Student support, community building events. So I work with a lot of our student groups who I'll mention shortly around some community building events that we do, including, I think Nicholas mentioned our Friday happy hours. That's part of like a fun community building piece that we do here in the department. I work with some of our faculty around hiring processes, as I mentioned, working with our staff for community and support, and just like overall building out a good climate and culture for our department. So a core piece to the office is that we also have the strategy and equity team and committee, which is made up of our associate head, Miho, and Alyssa and myself. And this committee is something that students have participated in, Alyssa being an example, where we kind of are like the steering committee and guiding committee for equity and belonging for the department. So my office and the committee sort of worked hand in hand. And I showcase this as a way of showing you all how student voice participates in something like this. So just wanted you all to keep that in mind as you think about applying to our program and how you see yourself here. So I just wanted to spotlight some initiatives that come out of my office. One of them being the applicant mentorship program. You may be a part of it right now and may be working with a mentor as we speak. So AMP pairs prospective students like yourself with current graduate students who can offer some guidance and answer questions that you have around the statement of objectives and portfolios and just like the overall application process. And right now, the AMP program is closed for this admissions cycle. But once you arrive at MIT and you are accepted and admitted into the program, and this is something that our current graduate students love and love to participate in as mentors. Next is that we have the NOMAS conference, which some of you may be familiar with. So we take a group of students every year to this conference as a way to network and connect with local chapters and sort of commit to advocacy and professional development within architecture on a national and global context. And we actually have a chapter here at MIT. I'll talk about them in a little bit. So this year we were in Kansas City, and it was a great opportunity to meet. We may have met some of you if you attended the conference. And again, it's just another opportunity to get our students to be connected and do some networking outside of campus. We also offer the architecture advising lunch twice a year, one in the fall semester and one in the spring semester. So this, again, is just another initiative to connect you to your future advisor. So just carving out some more time to have that somewhat one-on-one / group conversation with other advisees and your advisor to just touch base, do a quick check-in, and start the process of just connecting with your advisor throughout the year. Next is the Tuskegee and MIT collaborative workshops. So I know earlier in the session, Nicholas mentioned Robert R. Taylor and sort of the history of Tuskegee University connecting to MIT. And this is, we're very proud of this program. It's a 3-year collaborative initiative developed through MIT and Tuskegee, where every year we bring up a group of Tuskegee students to do an intensive workshop for about a week with Design X and our very own Dr. Larry Sass from Computation. And then the week after, we bring MIT students down to Tuskegee to learn more about historical preservations and historic buildings and the technology behind historic preservation. So this is a great collaborative workshop where we've had our own graduate students kind of be a part of as a student guide for the Tuskegee students, and then having group lunches with them, as well as signing up for the course to go down to Tuskegee. So it's a fantastic program, and we're very proud of it. So next, I'm just going to quickly spotlight some like our student community and some of the groups that I help advise or sit in as an advisor for. And again, these student groups provide an opportunity for students to not only use your voice and for advocacy, but also make friends, which is great when you get here, because it can be a little confusing when you arrive in Boston and you're like, I don't know who these people are, but these student groups are a way to not only create those friendships, but also have a chance to be active in our department. So we have our Architecture Student Council, which brings in students from all of our programs, including doctoral and undergrad, and they work with Tessa Kateri, myself, and our faculty around leadership and advocacy to build out that culture of support and healthy studying and working environment in the department. And then we also have our NOMAS chapter here at MIT. So this is like another great way to be connected to folks. And also through the NOMAS chapter, this is where we bring students to the conference. So just remember that if and when you come here. We also have Shift W, which is our women and non-binary group, and they do amazing work in sort of uplifting, a big underrepresented demographic within the field of architecture. And they do workshops, programs, and exhibitions that uplift that group. And I sit as advisor for them. And then we also have our ArchRefs. So we have 3 ArchRefs this year who are trained in conflict mediation and peer-to-peer support. So when our students perhaps don't want to come talk to me or Tessa or Kateri, and they just want somebody who's a peer who they can talk to, the ArchRefs are a fantastic resource for that peer-to-peer contact. And then they also do really fun, low-key stress relief events and programs throughout the year as a way for students to be able to just step away from studio and have a fun time. So I think this year during mid-reviews and midterms, they had a tea and snack cart that they just like pushed around studio. So that kind of gives you a good example of that. I also just want to spotlight additional networks of support that our team works with pretty much on the daily and where we connect students. So we've already talked about OGE. We also have the Institute of Discrimination and Harassment Office. We have the MIT Disability and Access Services Office. They're a fantastic resource. We have Doing Well, and Doing Well is incredible. They have mental health and physical health resources for students. So when we can't give you that support, we always work with our Doing Well group to give you that support. We also have the Women and Gender Services team to uplift students who are women and non-binary folks. And then the LGBTQ plus student services to uplift some of our queer students that are in our department. So that is it for me. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to connect and chat. Before we sign off, I'll make sure to share my Calendly link so that if you'd like to schedule a time with me, you're more than welcome to do that. And I think, Tessa, we have maybe time for like 1 or 2 questions, maybe?
Yep. Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Nandini, please feel free to speak up as we wait for our students who will be leading this next part to join us as well.